The regular meeting of the St. Joseph County Council, September 13th, 2022 is now called to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the invocation, which will be given this evening by Reverend Adam Sharp from St. Mark's Missionary Church.
Let's pray. Father in heaven, you continue to raise up men and women to lead our country, to lead our counties and lead our cities. You've done this all throughout Scripture. You give them passion, energy, skills, talents, and treasures to use for the good of others. And so today we commission the staff, these people, this community, Jesus, that we'd be able to discern your will clearly. We'd be able to hear you. We'd be able to worship you. And God, we're so grateful to be able to do this in a free country, that we can debate, we can talk, but most importantly, God, we can love others. So God, allow us to love others. Let us discern your will. Go before us. In your name, amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Reverend Sharp. I would also ask everyone tonight to please keep our colleague, Councilman Kanaricki, and his family in your thoughts and prayers. He's dealing with some medical family issues, so thank you.
Mr. President?
Mr. Catanzarite?
I know we're a couple days after 9/11, but I would ask we maybe take a moment of silence to remember all the Americans in the military and public safety employees, police officers, firefighters, EMS workers that paid that ultimate sacrifice 21 years ago in Pennsylvania and New York. We just take a moment just to remember those people that did that for us and for the Americans that lost their lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda are petitions, communications, and miscellaneous matters. May I have a motion to approve the minutes from the August 9th and the August 23rd, 2022 public hearings?
So moved.
Do I hear a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. The minutes from the August 9th and the August 23rd, 2022 public hearings are approved. Report from the county auditor.
No report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Report from county commissioners. No report. Report from any council special committees. No report. Next on the agenda, our first reading. Clerk, will you please read bill number 12722?
Bill number 12722, an ordinance amending and supplementing Title 15 Land Usage, Chapter 154, Planning and Zoning of the St. Joseph County Code as amended for property located at 46450 Quince Road and 26395 State Road 2 from R Single Family District and from C Commercial District Site Plan Specific to C Commercial Not Site Plan Specific. Petitioner R&R Property LLC.
Bill number 12722 is assigned to the Land Use Planning Committee. Clerk, will you please read the next bill?
Bill number 12822, an ordinance amending and supplementing Title 15 Land Usage, Chapter 154, Planning and Zoning of the St. Joseph County Code as amended for property located at 55401 Bittersweet and unaddressed abutting parcel to the east and 3± acre abutting triangular parcel to the south from R Single Family District to I Industrial District. Petitioner Bashor Home of the United Methodist Church, Inc.
Bill number 12822 is assigned to the Land Use Planning Committee. That concludes first readings for this evening. Next on the agenda, we have first reading and public hearing on the Solid Waste Management, the St. Joe County Airport Authority, and the St. Joseph County 2023 budget. Clerk, will you please read Bill number 12222?
Bill number 12222, an ordinance for appropriation and tax rates, Budget Form 4, solid waste.
Mr. Shebesh?
Mr. Morton, members of the council, Randy Shebesh, Executive Director, Solid Waste Management District, with offices at 828 Kerr Street in South Bend. The budget that you have before you is identical to the budget that we discussed a couple weeks ago. There have been no changes made to it. Since our board approved it before we met, I couldn't make any changes. So, again, as we spoke a couple weeks back, the increases, the vast majority of the increases are due to expenditure increases that we have had this year based on contractual agreements, mostly to do with fuel surcharges, transportation charges, and added cost to the materials we need supply-wise to perform the services that we do. Otherwise, it is identical to what we've already discussed, and I would be happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, I would hope that you would pass this come next month. And also, 91 days from now, I will be out of this position, so this will be the last time you will ever hear from me. I'm counting it down. It's been fun, but time to go.
Outstanding job, I might say.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Any questions for Mr. Shebesh from council? Hearing none, we will now open a public hearing on Bill number 12222. Does anyone wish to speak in favor of this bill? Does anyone wish to speak in opposition of the bill? Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing on 12222. Clerk, will you please read the next bill, Bill number 12322?
Bill number 12322, ordinance for appropriations and tax rates, Budget Form 4, Airport Authority.
Mr. Daigle?
Good evening, council members. Mike Daigle, CEO, Executive Director, South Bend International Airport, 4477 Progress Drive. As we continue to evolve, both as a facility and as a country leaving the COVID pandemic, we are still focusing on catching up on many items that we deferred in expenses during that time frame. We're also seeing many improvements in most of our activity areas. However, passenger traffic is still one of those things that was down significantly and was recovering, and now with crew problems by airlines, the recovery has slowed somewhat. In our budget that you have before you, the largest increase fall into a few categories. Personal services, including salaries, insurance increases, personal services, retirement contributions, and a couple of new positions. Supplies include the increased costs of fuel, repair parts, components for vehicles and buildings, improved lightning protection. Other services and charges is just the increase in doing travel and training for maintaining the certification and educational requirements for our staff. Professional services such as legal, HR, and HVAC components continue in costs. The non-operating budget for us is our major expense items, and that include primarily grant items received from the federal and state and local government that we anticipate in construction in the 2023 budget year. So I'll stop there and be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions from council? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We will now open a public hearing on Bill 12322. Does anyone wish to speak in favor of this bill? Is there anyone that wishes to speak in opposition of the bill? Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing on 12322. Clerk, will you please read the next bill?
Bill number 12422, ordinance for appropriations and tax rates, Budget Form 4, St. Joseph County, Indiana. This, good evening, Council. This is John Murphy, Chief Deputy Auditor with offices on the second floor. I'm not going to, Jen, are you trying to get the PowerPoint? That's okay. You have copies of that, and also anyone in the audience, there's copies of the report. So why don't I just go through it with you? Why don't we go to the first page, page number 2. Revenue is expected for total funds for the St. Joseph County of $199,624,619. The largest portion of revenue, of course, is property tax revenue, which we're estimating to increase approximately 5%. The average growth quotient allowed by the DLGF is 5%, so that kind of gives you a parameter of how that might come out. Local income tax is budgeted at $40,196,107. We think that will be also increasing by about 5%. We'll know for sure on October 1st what that income tax number is. We think it's a pretty good estimate right now, but we'll know for sure and plug that into the budget. Want to go to page 3? That's the expenditures by function, meaning the kind of breaks it out according to what the function is. The general government, which is your county council, commissioners, auditor, assessor, treasurer, those kinds of functions. That total budget is a little over $19 million. The public safety, which is police, jail, EMA primarily, is $33.9 million. In any government I've ever worked for, the public safety is your highest expenditure. So that's not surprising. Law and courts is $30.6 million. That's the prosecutor, all 3 of the courts, the public defender's office, and so forth. So the total expenditures are $208,723,706. Why don't we go to page 4? We look at expenditures, we like to look at it in 2 different ways, by function, also by type. This chart shows expenditures by type, and total salaries, wages, and benefits is 49.4% of the budget. That's not surprising. In some governments, it's even higher than 50%. So it's about 50% of the total budget consists of cost for employees. And the rest is broken up into different things. When we go now to page 5, where we're focusing in primarily on the general fund, which is the most important fund for the county, the total budget expenditures are $79,942,986, and we tried to, during the budget discussion, to get to below that $80 million mark. We did. The highest expenditures in the general fund is for the law and courts, followed by public safety, and then general government. And the interesting thing about this, I'll go to the next page. Go to page 6. This is also general fund, looking at it a little bit differently. Total expenditures for salaries, wages, and benefits is 76% in the general fund. So that's why we talk so much about the general fund during the budgeting discussions, because that's where a lot of the employees reside. 76% of the total budget is for employees. And then we'll go to the last page, the page number 7 shows the changes in budget in the general fund throughout the years. And it has increased, although revenue has also increased, and we feel like we've maintained a sustainable budget. We feel like we're being prudent with our budgeting. Then why don't we go to page 8? And page 8 and 9 are all of the budgets. We focus so much on the general fund, we sometimes don't think about all of the budgets, but we have all of these listed for you. It shows the change from one year to the next. For example, the major cumulative bridge fund, right about 10 rows down, increased by $900,000. That's not surprising for a capital fund, because you collect the money one year, you hold on to it, then you may expend it in the next year. And so then going to page 9, some of the largest increases relate to the hotel motel tax fund. We've had some of these, like the Fund 4926 Mishawaka Sports Complex Fund, that has been with us for several years, but hasn't actually had an expenditure yet. So they're planning on using $1.75 million of their their money in 2023. And so the total budget, again, is $208,723,706. In total, about 9% increase, although I don't really like to look at the grand total because it's not that meaningful. I mean, you really need to look at each fund to make sure each fund is financially solvent, and I think we are. Happy to answer any questions that you have.
Any questions from council for Mr. Murphy?
The only comment I'll make on the subject of the personnel costs, of course, you bring out the high percentage, but if you add in the rest of the personnel costs, this is on page 6. You know, the health insurance is part of that, of course, and the FICA is part of that, and the retirement's part of that. So if you add all that together, it's well over 80% of the total. In fact, maybe you have that number for us.
Yeah, it is. It's 76% of the total. That I've totaled it there for you. And
Does that include those items?
Yeah, it does. It does.
Okay.
You make a good point about health insurance, but that cost actually has been declining. We're having a good year so far as health insurance. We actually have reduced those expenditures for next year as far as the budget.
So the 76% includes retirement?
It does, yeah, it does. Any other questions?
Any other questions from council for Mr. Murphy?
How much does that leave us in reserves?
Interestingly enough, the general fund should end the year, if we spend all of our money, all of our budget, which we never really do, there's always going to be some residual. We're ending the 2023 with about 20% reserves in the general fund, and that's what our target is. And so that's why, as Steve's nodding his head, that's why we feel comfortable with this budget. We're hitting our target, which is a good target. It's not just something pulled out of the sky. The general GFOA, the Government Finance Officers Association, recommends 2 months of reserves, which is about 17%. So that's kind of what we base it on. We added a little bit just to be conservative in budgeting, but that's a national benchmark that they use.
Thank you.
I think we say that the 20% is somewhat comfortable, but I think you also have to say in the last 2 years, our percentage reserves have gone down, and therefore, regarding our next budget cycle, there's a lot of concern about taking those reserves down further. I mean, that's also true.
Yeah, we're budgeted to reduce those somewhat in 2023. So yeah, we'll want to look at that for 2024. You know, be conservative on budgeting.
Yeah, because at one time they were quite a bit more than 20%.
Well, the maximum was 25%.
Yeah.
And we reached that at the end of 2020, I believe.
The other factor having to do with next year as we do budgeting and so on is the fact that it looks like we're headed into a recession, which means our taxpayers are going to have more trouble paying their bills. So I mean, I'm not talking about the current budget. I'm talking about the budget process next year is under 2 kinds of pressure, in my opinion. One is our reserves aren't that great, and secondly, we probably will have a recession on our hands.
Did you want to comment, Steve?
Which may also accompanied by somewhat of an inflationary cost side, which makes it tough. Yeah.
Mr. President, could I comment on a few items?
Please do.
For the benefit of the whole group.
Please do.
First of all, thank you, John, for this in-depth study. Every year, it seems like we're adding additional analysis and charts and the ability to look into the future and into the past and get a lot smarter. So I want to compliment John and thank him. Also, those of you that put in a lot of time, you'll recall that $4 million ago, we started this process, and there have been a lot of tough decisions made just to get to this point. The general fund, I'll agree, Mr. File, we need to keep a close eye on it, but we're very comfortable with a 20% reserve, and so is Standard & Poor's. They're very comfortable with us being at a 20% reserve, and we anticipate the potential of having an increase in our rating due to the amount of analysis and numbers that Mr. Murphy is sending you guys on a monthly basis. Thumbs up. This is a good budget. The public can comment. You are not voting until next month, but thumbs up on the process.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy and Mr. Dalton, for a lot of detailed analysis and a lot of time put into this budget. And I guess the only other comment I would make that, Mr. File, I do agree with your comments and your assessment, but as long as these 2 gentlemen have anything to say about this budget process, and I'm basing this upon comments that were made during this period, and a lot of time and effort was put in to this process. I just can't see, as long as these two gentlemen are with us, them allowing us to go under 20% or so. And I mean that in a positive, as a positive comment, so thank you.
Another general comment.
Mr. Morton?
I'll say this much on behalf of the council. There's a lot of time that went into this, and people spent many, many hours, and my fellow council people spent a lot of hours at this. And I think there's only 2 councils in the state of Indiana that have budget responsibility. And so therefore, that is one of our biggest jobs, and I think a lot of time goes into it. Be they Democrats or Republicans, I would say that the people come together and work hard at this process, and that this council, being one of the, I think, only 2 out of the 92 counties in Indiana that has budget responsibilities, it's a serious matter that's taken here. We also get a lot of information from our consultant and from our finance people, and I would like to say, particularly on behalf of Mr. Murphy here, I always find as a councilman, when I ask for information, he gives me accurate information. It's not information based on whether it makes somebody look good or somebody look bad, but straight, accurate information. I think he does an outstanding job for this county, and I want to compliment him on that.
Mr. Tanzarite?
I just want to echo what you said, Mr. Morton. The confidence I have passing this budget, even though we're not voting on it tonight, but the fact that we've all worked so hard on it, the fact that our financial consultant and our deputy county auditor both give their stamp of approval. And, you know, it's purely speculative whether or not we're going to have a recession or not next year. I hope to God we don't have a recession. But whether we do or whether we don't, I think this budget was crafted making it bulletproof if there were a recession. And I think our financial advisors are saying that whether there's a recession or not, this budget will stand up on its own. And in fact, we're probably going to see an increase in our bond rating. So I'm confident, based on their advice, recession or not, we're going to be okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from any council member?
When is Dalton's contract up?
The next recession.
That's our solution.
Any other comments? Hearing none.
I do. I wasn't
Mr. Nolan.
We're going to do this all over again next month. But I just think it's important to understand, from a historical perspective, that the reserves weren't built up just by accident, and we didn't spend them down by accident, and we didn't find ourselves in this position by accident. They were built up on purpose to get through the fiscal cliff. It didn't turn out as bad as it was. We spent it down on purpose, and it was a very deliberate process this time to stay above 20%. Good point. Which is where we're at.
2020, the reserve was 20 million, maybe?
25 million, I think.
Was it 25?
I think something like that.
Any other comments from any council member? Hearing none, we will open the public hearing on bill number 12422. Does anyone wish to speak in favor of this bill? Does anyone wish to speak in opposition of the bill? Hearing none, the public hearing on bill 12422 is now closed. Clerk, will you please read the next bill, bill number 12522?
Bill number 12522, an ordinance establishing salaries and fixing the number of employees of St. Joseph County, Indiana for the year 2023. With respect to public hearing, or my comments and Steve's comments, we've already made those in connection with the budget. We integrate our budget and our salary ordinance pretty nifty. You know, it's a pretty good way to do it. And so I don't have any additional comments.
Okay. Any questions from council on 12522? Mr. Catanzarite?
Do we need to make an amendment for the discussion we had earlier this evening with the county recorder? Do we need to amend that salary ordinance, or will we do that?
It will be before the October meeting, before you vote.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from any council member on 12522? Hearing none, I'll open a public hearing on 12522. Does anyone wish to speak in favor of this bill? Does anyone wish to speak in opposition of the bill? Hearing none, the public hearing on bill number 12522 is now closed. Next, under resolutions, we have bill number 12622. Clerk, will you please read the bill?
Bill number 12622, a resolution of the St. Joseph County Council approving the 2023 budget submitted by Liberty Township.
Petitioner?
Good evening, council. I'm Sue Dittmar. I am the trustee from Liberty Township. And I'm here to ask that you adopt our budget. Mr. Dalton is going to speak with you.
Let me brag on this township for just a minute since they have their moment on your agenda. Every single township and volunteer fire department in this county and probably all 92 counties in this state are struggling. They're struggling to find people. They're struggling to find public safety, EMS, paramedics, EMTs. It's difficult. It's not only is it inflation, but there aren't enough people that are trained. And we're all poaching from each other because, of course, the labor force would prefer to get paid more. This township took the gigantic step of reaching out to their next-door neighbor in Green Township and forming in this last year a fire territory, which is really the only way that you can ask the taxpayers for a little bit more money so that you can staff fully your paramedic and your EMS personnel. And that's a big step. And you may, if you know the story, you may know that they had to have 12 public hearings. 12 public hearings so that the town of North Liberty, Liberty Township, and Green Township could join forces in this consolidated fire territory. So in front of you is the first budget, and you're adopting tonight, if you vote yes, for this fire territory. And congratulations, I think, to the board and to this trustee. We ask for your adoption, please.
Thank you. Any questions from council? Hearing none, we'll open a public hearing on Bill 12622. Does anyone wish to speak in favor of this bill?
Yes, Tom McCormick, Liberty Township Board President. Just stand here in support, and as Steve had mentioned, I come to you wearing many hats. For one, a citizen in Liberty Township, also a firefighter on Liberty Township for the past 32 years, and I believe now serving on the board for 10 years and as president for probably 6 or 8 of that. It makes it tough because we at the same time get the great relationship of coming to you and having to ask for you to approve our budget every year because we are so strapped for manpower that we actually have, my board consists of all volunteer firefighters on my board. So we look the numbers over very tight like it's our own money because truly it is. And at the same time, bringing it to you and asking for your blessing and approval on it so we can carry on and take care of our citizens in our township. And so again, with now merging with Green Township, which is just like that neighboring community or neighboring to us, we've gave them fire protection for many years. A lot of people don't realize that Liberty and Green and also the Southwest merge or take care of fire protection in that Green Township area. Will now to be able to support full-time ambulance staffing is why we're creating this territory, and we need this approval of this budget to move forward. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak in favor of this bill? Does anyone wish to speak in opposition of the bill? Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing on bill number 12622. Do I hear a motion on the bill?
Motion for passage.
Do I hear a second? Second. Motion to pass bill number 12622 was made by Councilman Catanzarite. It was seconded by Councilwoman Hess. Any further council discussion on this bill? Hearing none, clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mr. Krasinski?
Yes.
Mr. Nolan?
Yes.
Mr. File?
Aye.
Ms. Hess?
Yes.
Mr. Figg?
Yes.
Mr. Catanzarite?
Yes.
Mr. Root?
Yes.
President Morton?
Yes.
The bill passes 8-0.
Thank you. Let the record show that bill number 12622 was passed by a vote of 8-0. Next, we have salary amendments. Clerk, will you please read bill number 11722?
Bill number 11722, an ordinance amending ordinance 9521, the same being an ordinance establishing salaries and fixing the number of employees of St. Joseph County for the year 2022. Petitioner Emergency Management.
Mr. Krasinski, committee report, please, sir.
President Morton, this comes to the council with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you very much. Petitioner? Please state your name and address for the record. You have 5 minutes to address the council.
Council members, my name is Al Kursitz. I'm the interim EMA director for St. Joseph County with offices at 125 South Lafayette. With me is my deputy director, Jim Lopez. This is just a reorganization of the salaries. It's revenue neutral, actually saves some money. Deputy Director Lopez and I came on about 6 weeks ago, and we're working to make the Emergency Management Agency the best in the state. We bring 81 years of fire service experience. We're both trained at TEACS, which is the FEMA War College at Texas A&M in College Station, Texas. We both have our FEMA task force books. We've been scrambling to audit things, and as we come out of the pandemic, make the EMA much better than it was and try to make it the best in the state.
Thank you. Any questions from council?
You should have all got an email from us also that's stating what we've done over the last few weeks and where we're going and what our goals are.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments from council? Hearing none, I'll open a public hearing on Bill 11722. Does anyone wish to speak in favor of this bill? Does anyone wish to speak in opposition of the bill? Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing on 11722. Do I hear a motion?
For approval.
Do I hear a second? A motion to pass Bill number 11722 was made by Councilman Nolan. It was seconded by Councilman Krasinski. Any further council discussion on this bill? Hearing none, clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mr. Nolan.
Yes.
Mr. File.
Aye.
Ms. Hess.
Yes.
Mr. Fig.
Yes.
Mr. Catanzarite.
Yes.
Mr. Root.
Yes.
Mr. Krasinski.
Yes.
President Morton.
Yes.
Bill passes 8-0.
Thank you. Let the record show that Bill number 11722 was passed by a vote of 8-0. Clerk, will you please read the next bill on the agenda? Bill number 12122.
Bill number 12122, an ordinance amending ordinance 9521, the same being an ordinance establishing salaries and fixing the number of employees of St. Joseph County for the year 2022. Petitioner Portage Manor.
Mr. Krasinski, committee report, please, sir.
President Morton, this comes to the council with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you very much. Petitioner?
Hello, this is Courtney Mullins. I'm the administrator for Portage Manor. I know I did a presentation late July for the budget with all of you and answered questions then. At this time, our budget increase is about 10% across the board, except for salaries, in which we are keeping neutral. Same as this year, the only exception being a small $3,000 increase for our food service director to bring her up to market wage. We also are combining this with a request under G on the documents in front of you. We are asking for an appropriation of $65,000 into contractual services that is specifically for healthcare contractual services staff. So bringing in nurses and QMAs to care for our residents. I'm also asking for the appropriation of an extra $83,000 with the FICA and PERF. That is 2 more full-time QMAs. The hope is that we will not even touch the $65,000 for contractual services, and we will be able to hire the 2 extra QMAs that we need.
Thank you. Any questions for the petitioner from council? Hearing none, we'll open a public hearing on 12122. Does anyone wish to speak in favor of this bill? Does anyone wish to speak in opposition of the bill? Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing on 12122. Do I hear a motion on the bill?
Motion for passage.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion to pass Bill number 12122 was made by Councilman Catanzarite. It was seconded by Councilwoman Hess. Any further council discussion on this bill? Hearing none, clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mr. File,
Aye.
Ms. Hess,
Yes.
Mr. Fig,
Yes.
Mr. Catanzarite,
Yes.
Mr. Root,
Yes.
Mr. Krasinski,
Yes.
Mr. Nolan,
Yes.
President Morton.
Yes.
The bill passes 8-0.
Thank you. Let the record show that Bill number 12122 was passed by a vote of 8-0. Next on the agenda, we have public hearing and public comment on fiscal matters. All financial issues were heard and discussed at our August 23rd, 2022 committee meeting. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor of any financial issue on tonight's agenda? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition of any financial issue on tonight's agenda? Hearing none, public comment is now closed. Clerk, will you please read Bill number 11622?
Bill number 11622, an ordinance appropriating and transferring monies for the purposes herein specified for the several departments herein listed of St. Joseph County government.
May I have a motion on Bill number 11622?
Move for approval.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
A motion to pass Bill number 11622 was made by Councilwoman Hess. It was seconded by Councilman Nolan. Any further council discussion on 11622? Hearing none, clerk, will you please take the roll?
Ms. Hess,
Yes.
Mr. Fig,
Yes.
Mr. Catanzarite,
Yes.
Mr. Root,
Yes.
Mr. Krasinski,
Yes.
Mr. Nolan,
Yes.
Mr. File,
Aye.
President Morton.
Yes.
Bill passes 8-0.
Thank you. Let the record show that Bill number 11622 was passed by a vote of 8-0. Clerk, will you please read the next bill on the agenda, Bill number 11822?
Bill number 11822, an ordinance appropriating and/or transferring monies for the purpose herein specified for the department herein listed of St. Joseph County government.
Ms. Hess, committee report, please.
Mr. President, Bill number 11822 comes to the full council with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you very much. Petitioner?
Hi, I'm Al Kursitz, interim EMA director, offices at 125 South Lafayette Boulevard. This was something that was started before I came on, but basically this is just a transfer of funds, ARP funds, that were left over from a project with the county police to pay for a consultant study for the sirens, warning sirens we have.
Thank you. Any questions from council for Mr. Kurtzitz? Hearing none, I'll open a public hearing on Bill number 11822. Does anyone wish to speak in favor of this bill? Does anyone wish to speak in opposition of the bill? Hearing none, the public hearing is now closed. So I hear a motion on 11822.
Motion for approval.
Second.
Motion to pass Bill number 11822 was made by Councilman Krasinski. It was seconded by Councilwoman Hess. Any further council discussion on this bill? Hearing none, clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mr. Fig,
Yes.
Mr. Catanzarite,
Yes.
Mr. Root,
Yes.
Mr. Krasinski,
Yes.
Mr. Nolan,
Yes.
Mr. File,
Aye.
Ms. Hess,
Yes.
President Morton.
Yes.
Bill passes 8-0.
Thank you. Let the record show that Bill number 11822 was passed by a vote of 8-0. Clerk, will you please read the next bill, Bill number 11322?
Bill number 11322, ordinance of the St. Joseph County Council authorizing the issuance of the county's taxable income, economic development tax increment revenue bonds in one or more series, the provisions of the proceeds thereof to Honeysuckle Solar LLC or an affiliate thereof, and authorizing and approving other actions in respect thereto. Petitioner Phil Facenda.
Ms. Hess, committee report, please.
Mr. President, Bill number 11322 comes to the full council with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you very much. Mr. Facenda?
Mr. President, other members of the council, Phil Facenda from Barnes & Thornburg, 201 South Main Street, South Bend. The bond ordinance resolution, or the bond ordinance that is in front of you is the culmination of many months of negotiations with Honeysuckle Solar LLC. That you will recall that in July, this council approved an economic development agreement with that entity. And for the development of a solar farm that will be an investment of approximately $165 million in Olive Township. As part of the economic development agreement, the structure of the incentive from the county is economic development revenue bonds, and those are approved through this ordinance. Also, as part, the next resolution that will be before you is the final step in the establishment of a new economic development area for the solar project. And the Redevelopment Commission of the county approved its final step in the establishment of that economic development area / TIF area this morning at its meeting. As a result of that, the TIF revenues that will be generated, the tax increment finance revenues that will be generated from the area, through the pledge of the Redevelopment Commission of those revenues and the adoption of this ordinance, if the council should choose to do so, will serve as the debt service on those bonds. The bonds are only, the security for the bonds are only those TIF revenues. There's no general pledge by the county of any tax revenue of the county or other revenues of the county towards the repayment of these bonds. The amount of the bonds is in an amount not to exceed $50 million, and the anticipated amortization of the bonds is 25 years from the date they are issued. It is not intended that the bonds will be issued until approximately a year from now, at which time most of the solar project will have been completed. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions from council? Thank you.
Thank you.
We will now open a public hearing on bill number 11322. Does anyone wish to speak in favor of this bill? Does anyone wish to speak in opposition of the bill? Hearing none, the public hearing is now closed. Do I hear a motion on 11322?
For approval.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion to pass bill number 11322 was made by Councilwoman Hess. It was seconded by Councilman Catanzarite. Any further council discussion on this bill? Hearing none, clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mr. Catanzarite.
Yes.
Mr. Root. Yes. Mr. Kaczynski.
Yes.
Mr. Nolan.
Yes.
Mr. File.
Aye.
Ms. Hess.
Yes.
Mr. Figg.
Yes.
President Morton.
Yes.
Bill passes 8-0.
Let the record show that bill number 11322 was passed by a unanimous vote of 8-0. Clerk, will you please read the next bill on the agenda, bill number 12022?
Bill number 12022, a resolution of the St. Joseph County Council approving the creation of the Solar Project Economic Development Area by St. Joseph County Redevelopment Commission. Petitioner Phil Facenda.
Ms. Hess, committee report, please.
Mr. President, Bill number 2022 comes to the full council with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you very much. Mr. Facenda?
Yes, Mr. President, members of the council, again, as I mentioned in the prior presentation, under Indiana law, the county council is required to approve the establishment of the economic development area for the solar project. That economic development area will then produce the TIF revenues that will pay the bonds that were just approved in the prior ordinance. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from council? Hearing none, I'll open the public hearing on 1/20/22. Does anyone wish to speak in favor of this bill? Does anyone wish to speak in opposition to the bill? Hearing none, the public hearing is now closed on 1/20/22. Do I hear a motion on the bill?
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion to pass bill number 1/20/22 was made by Councilman Nolan. It was seconded by Councilwoman Hess. Any further council discussion on this bill? Hearing none, clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mr. Root,
Yes.
Mr. Kaczynski,
Yes.
Mr. Nolan,
Yes.
Mr. File,
Aye.
Ms. Hess,
Yes.
Mr. Fig,
Yes.
Mr. Catanzarite,
Yes.
President Morton.
Yes.
Bill passes 8-0.
Let the record show that bill number 1/20/22 was passed by a vote of 8-0. We will move to item 16 under new business. Clerk, will you please read resolution number R13/22?
A resolution of the St. Joseph County Council declaring a portion of St. Joseph County an economic revitalization area pursuant to Indiana Code 6-1.1-12.1-1 at sequence declaratory resolution. Petitioner, Ultium Cells LLC.
Mr. Shalio?
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the council. Bill Shalio, Economic Development Director, here before you today with amended bill number 11522. And what this bill is a technical corrections bill, if you will. In the process of getting ready to put together the confirming resolution and dealing with some other property issues, we determined that some of the tax key numbers that were identified in the original bill needed to be corrected. There's some additional information in your packet that was included. What we found is that there were several cases, or two in particular, where two tax ID numbers represented a number of properties that weren't immediately adjacent or even in the same property section as the properties within the IEC Site 2 or IEC Site 1 boundaries. So in the process of working with the plat room and GIS, correcting tax key numbers, we determined that two tax key numbers needed to be corrected, one tax key number needed to be removed, and we also noticed that there was a zero missing in one of the property addresses. So we're before you today asking to amend bill number 11522, again, just from a technical standpoint. If you approve this tonight, then it would move forward for confirming resolution at the next meeting.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Shalio from council? Thank you. We'll now open a public hearing on resolution R1322. Does anyone wish to speak in favor of this bill? Does anyone wish to speak in opposition of the bill? Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. Do I hear a motion on resolution R13-22?
Motion for approval.
Do I hear a second? Second. A motion to pass resolution number R1322 was made by Councilman Krasinski. It was seconded by Councilman Nolan. Any further council discussion on this bill? Hearing none, clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mr. Krasinski,
Yes.
Mr. Nolan,
Yes.
Mr. File,
Aye.
Ms. Hess,
Yes.
Mr. Fig,
Yes.
Mr. Catanzarite,
Yes.
Mr. Root,
Yes.
President Morton.
Yes.
The resolution passes 8-0.
Thank you. Let the record show that the resolution number R1322 was passed by a unanimous vote of 8-0. Next, we will have an update on the Ultium Cell project.
Mr. President, members of the council, Jeff Frey, President and CEO of South Bend Regional Chamber with offices at 101 North Michigan here in downtown South Bend. Thank you for the chance to be with you this evening to talk to you a little bit about Ultium. We thought we'd take advantage of the chance why we had you together, knowing that you have a number of things to consider at your next meeting on September 27th. With me this evening is our economic development team that's been working exclusively on this. Allison Herzig from my team, of course, your team here at the county. We do have the company, John Blanchard, Troy Kennedy, Jim Herbert, Matt Emery, Tom Gallagher, all are joining us virtually as well. So we have Brock Herr from the state of Indiana with us tonight, Jared Huss, who's been on our water team, Shelley Klug from our power team, the whole team. And so we thought we'd have this chance to talk to you. By way of quick recap, if you remember when we were with you last time, we talked that Ultium is considering site locations for a fourth electric vehicle battery plant. St. Joseph County has been narrowed down as to one of the finalists, and so they're working through the process right now with us and other sites. And our hope is that in the next month or so, they'll make a final decision on their location for the fourth battery site. We, of course, think St. Joseph County is the right spot for it, so we're working on closely with you, with the public, with the company, and to make sure that we try to answer all your questions. If you remember when we were here before, we talked about what a good fit we thought the Ultium team was. When you or when the public, the community talked to us about appropriate uses out there, we went and found a company that's known for their sustainability efforts, that's known for being environmental stewards, that's known for community partnerships, that's known for what they do in employee diversity and responsible manufacturing, and we believe we found that in this partnership here. This is a company, of course, that's no stranger to Indiana. They have a large footprint here with 6,000 plus employees and annually make significant economic investments in Indiana's economy. So we're pretty excited to be working with this company. We've been working to really try to help answer questions. You know, obviously, at our last meeting, we heard a number of questions. Many of you have shared questions with us. We've, as we're watching what's happening in the public and people are talking about this, we've asked questions. And so we wanted to talk just a little bit through some of that tonight. I do want to, though, point you to a source. And so I think one of the things that we were sensitive to in this is that we don't want you or others to have to answer the same question over and over and over and over and over again. So we built a landing page where we tried to answer some of those questions for you. So if you go to sbrchamber.com/Ultium, you can find answers there on everything from jobs in construction and why the site and why Ultium and environment and aquifer and waste and all those kind of things that we've gleaned both from the public presentation when Ultium was here before, but also from the public information that's available out there to the public. So we hope you'll spend a few minutes and read in greater detail there. We're going to hit a couple of those highlights tonight because what we've heard from you is the need to touch on a couple things. So some of our experts are going to talk through a few different things related to the aquifer and the environment and the jobs and some of those kind of things. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Bill Shalio from your economic development team to get that discussion started, and we'll just pop through a couple different ones. And we're interested in your feedback too. So if you have questions, if you want to ask them along the way, or at the end, just let us know, and we're happy to do that. So.
Jeff, thank you. And again, members of council, we appreciate you giving us this opportunity to talk about this very exciting project. Just from a timing perspective, we were here at the last meeting, had kind of a path forward. A couple of things have happened. We decided after listening to some community input and having some other conversations that an additional 2 weeks in the process, working with GM was probably the right way to go. We want to make sure that the tax abatement's set up properly, that all the information's there is correct, and that the development agreement that will come before you on the 27th meets all the concerns of not only the council, the Redevelopment Commission, Board of Commissioners, but also questions expressed by the town, the township, and just the community at large. So we took a 2-week pause in the process. So from a timing standpoint, we'll be back before you on the 27th with the confirming resolution. On the 27th, also we'll have a development agreement before you, but earlier in the day at 9 o'clock, it'll be before the Redevelopment Commission for its approval, subject to Board of Commissioner approval at 10 o'clock, and then all of those two approvals will be subject to the council approval that evening. So the goal is to have everything resolved on the 27th, or at least have action before you on the 27th. Also, the state of Indiana will have its approvals in the month of September. So the goal is really to get everything packaged up so that the company can make a decision and that we can be that decision that's made in September. From a next step standpoint, I'm going to turn the presentation next over to Brock Herr. I believe Brock is on the call. Jen, can you maybe skip us ahead? We put new batteries in, and of course it's not going to work. Oh, one more. Perfect. If Brock is on the call, can you unlock him, please?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Thanks, Bill, and thank you, Mr. President, members of the council. As Bill said, my name is Brock Herr. I'm Senior Vice President of Business Retention, Expansion, and Attractions for the IEDC. So effectively oversee our business development efforts for the state. And so just quickly wanted to echo the comments of Jeff and Bill to say that the state and the IEDC are extremely excited that the petitioner is compiling a competitive business case to potentially select St. Joseph County as the site for its next battery cell operation facility. The state truly believes that this is going to have obvious and immediate, state, local, and regional financial benefits and impacts, but also long-term economic stability and, frankly, future in an economy of the future. And so very excited again that the petitioner is considering this as a site. Do just want to give credit to this council and the county as well. One of the things we understand to be a big factor in us getting to this point is how well thought and strategically invested in the site that you have done. And so just want to give credit there where it's due. And then also say, in addition to the resolutions that are going to be considered tonight and on the 27th, if they should pass, the state, as Bill mentioned, is in the final stages of providing our similar type of financial security, if you will, to pave a clear path for a hopeful final decision in our favor. So happy to answer any questions that anyone may have, but thank you for having me back and considering this very exciting project for the state, the region, and the local community that we're just very thrilled about.
If there's no further,
Yeah.
yes.
I guess for Brock, do you, or can you anticipate when the state of Indiana will have all of that finalized? Will that be before September 27th or on September 27th or after September 27th?
We anticipate that to be before September 27th. In fact, a week and a half ago, we took a key milestone and step in front of the state budget committee, actually, to go ahead and get one of those final pieces of financial security that we needed. So we actually feel fairly to the point of finalizing our steps. And so the answer to your question would be yes, in advance of the 27th. We do believe and expect to have that in place.
Thank you.
Mr. Krasinski?
Brock, I appreciate your comments and thank you for your input, the couple meetings we've been in. But there's been a lot of discussion in regards to road improvements to State Road 2 in regards to truck traffic. Has the state looked at, and I get it that US 20 is a truck route, and I know there's been some concerns about truck traffic through the town of New Carlisle. Has the state kind of looked at that, if they can try to detour that a little bit if this project is to come to fruition?
Yes, we have been contemplating that and do actually anticipate that should this project move forward, that not only would NDOT and the state be supporting infrastructure improvements for traffic, but the IEDC would actually be committing infrastructure dollars as well to make major road improvements along State Road 2 to support not only the truck traffic, but commuter traffic as well as employee traffic, to make sure that there were not only no safety concerns and issues, but also efficient ingress and egress. So we actually have already had a number of discussions with the state, the regional NDOT folks, and the county bill there, and we're tracking very closely on what the needs would be. I can also say that I believe there were some plans already in place outside of this project for some improvements in NDOT's pipeline in that area. And so we're working to make sure that we would integrate seamlessly some of these additional road improvements that may be needed should this project come here.
Thank you.
If there's no further questions for Brock, we thank you for your comments. What I'd like to do now is turn this over to Jared Huss to talk about water resources related issues.
Thank you, Bill. Jared Huss, Lawson Fisher Associates, but also serve as the town engineer for New Carlisle. With me is Megan Flagg. She's a hydrogeologist with Peerless Midwest and has the brains. And so if there are more technical questions or deeper dives, we'll be here and be prepared for that. So we'll wait for the slides to catch up. One more. So really want to go through and answer a number of questions. I know there's a number of concerns and really want to clarify some information and put some data in front of you. So we're going to cover the aquifer, wellhead protection area, and the water treatment plants that serve this area currently and how we would move forward and address protection of the aquifer and proper use and management. So next slide, please. So really want to go over the studies and reports that have been done to date. 2015 Aquifer Performance Modeling and Drawdown. Really that was done by Peerless Midwest as SJEC. The power plant was put into service, so that gave us a great amount of data, which actually established the safe yield of the aquifer, which we'll talk about here shortly. Subsequent to that, 2019, similar. One is a summation of the background, but really a hydrogeologic background and study for study and the planning area, really taking all the data from the 2015, but collecting high-capacity well information, other aquifer data, and as I mentioned, there was a subsequent summary of that for easier digestion. And then something that you'll see as a pattern here, a cooperative effort between the Energy Center and the town and the county as part of the development agreement, ongoing groundwater level monitoring around the SJEC plant as well as the town treatment plant that serves SJEC starting in 16 and continuing on currently. We also then had wellhead protection area, so the town's responsibility as public water ID holder to update their wellhead protection area plan and delineation. That was done in 2020, again in partnership with both SJEC and Peerless Midwest. So those have both been updated and available. And then also water plant condition and improvements, again, important parts of understanding how we're appropriately and responsibly going to spend taxpayer dollars in development opportunities. And again, another collaborative effort between the county, the town, and in this case, Cleveland Cliffs, or Iontech Ironcoat, formerly known as. And so one is the potable treatment. Largely, these are potable treatment plants, so that's the human consumption component. And so there's 2016 existing conditions reports and improvements done underneath the county's umbrella in conjunction with the town, identifying costs, and then the 2021 report, existing conditions, and that was actually done by Cleveland Cliffs as a collaborative effort. They brought on a Ramble and Associates, who's 11,000 engineering person firm who manages the city of Pittsburgh's water, so pretty formative experts. So I really want to start at the base level, the aquifer. And so as I mentioned in the 2015 report, a safe yield was established for the Kankakee aquifer. And maybe it makes sense if we can go to the next slide real quick. I'll take a look at the, so this is a map and it shows high capacity wells in addition to the overall study area, and it shows the aquifers. So that in the blue is the Kankakee aquifer. The Valparaiso outwash is in pink. The Valparaiso moraine is in green. And then top right, more of tan, is the St. Joseph River Basin aquifer, and to the bottom is the Maxinkuckee aquifer. So as you can see, we're at a convergence of predominantly 3 outwash areas or aquifer areas, excuse me, and predominantly operating out of the Kankakee. And I'm going to touch on the current peak use and the adjusted peak use here in a second, so we go back to the first slide. So just want to, what I wanted to paint the picture of is that the aquifer is underneath everywhere that we're living. Everybody's living on top of the aquifer. Just want to make sure that was clear. Talked about the safe yield, so that's the amount of water that can be withdrawn from the aquifer without negatively impacting it long term. And want to address the current use. So current use is 17.7 MGD to about 21.9, or 50% of the safe yield. And that's really made up of domestic use, which is a very small amount, public and industrial use, and irrigation, predominantly farming irrigation. So what I think is important here is that those are all important pieces, and these, the 21.9, you see a range, is really the peak amount that would be used during farming hot summer months, because that's when that would be predominantly used. So want to talk about adjusted. So should, once honeysuckle moves forward, and should the other project move forward, you'll see the reduction in the use of high-capacity wells based on those projects of up to 15 high-capacity irrigation wells, which would reduce the usage of water by 1.9 to 3.8. And again, I want to clarify, when we talk about irrigation, that's used over a period of about 3 to 6 months. So we get well report logs on an annual basis. Those are normalized to those months of use. That's why the lower number would be a 6-month use. The higher number would be a 3-month use. It's fit within those parameters. If you then added the 1.5 MGD anticipated for Altium, and then added those combined, you're looking at about 43% safe yield. So next slide. I think worth pointing out, should these projects move forward, the adjusted peak use or the future use would actually be less than our current peak use. And I think that's pretty important to take into account, that there's a balance of water use out in this area. And as we change uses and look at those, that there is some consideration to be given to that. So I want to talk about the water treatment plants. There are currently 2 water treatment plants. The first one is the potable plant in the blue. That serves predominantly the town and Cleveland Cliffs, but Airgas and a number of others that reside in the area. And that was originally built in the late 1980s, excuse me. It has a current plant capacity of about 3 MGD. Its wells, there's 4 high-capacity wells that serve that plant with a production capacity of just over 10 million gallons a day. And average daily use is anywhere from 2.2 to 2.5 MGD, with Cliffs on the high side using about 2 MGD. And I want to give that in context to what we anticipate the upcoming or anticipated project, should that move forward. That is 1.5, so using less currently than the steel facility is. So then also we have the non-potable plant. That's the SJEC plant that was built to support the energy facility. That plant capacity is at 6 MGD. It has 3 wells, high-capacity wells with an approximate production value of about 9 MGD. And the current use is about 4 MGD out of that full capacity. So really not hitting capacity on that plant, which gives us some room to help serve others, potentially this project. Also very important, and I mentioned this earlier, voluntary information that's being collected in a collaborative effort is the 4 piezometers, groundwater monitoring wells around the site. And that's really in the 2015 report, Peerless produced a model that showed how the aquifer would react to water withdrawal, high-capacity well withdrawal. And so in doing so, part of the agreement was to install these piezometers to measure that impact so that in future data we could truth or prove the impacts against the model versus reality. And so we'll continue to collect that data, and it's ongoing as we speak. So just want to point those out. Again, and an important part of this is the wellhead protection centered around the potable plant. And really that's the protection mechanism for the aquifer, in addition to the collaborative effort of collecting the additional data. So as I mentioned, the town's responsibility to update the wellhead protection area, or the wellhead protection plan and delineation, that was done in 2020, IDEM approved, and it did both the delineation and the Phase 2 plan. Want to mention that, and there are graphics available to show the impact of that area, the wellhead protection area. There's 2 zones, a 1-year time of travel and a 5-year time of travel that are most significant and regulated by the state of Indiana and by St. Joseph County per ordinance, and also by the requirements of the town and their wellhead protection plan. I want to mention that within that wellhead protection area, there are existing businesses that we interact with on a routine basis: Cleveland Cliffs, Helena Chemical, Gavel and Grain, Airgas, SJC, et cetera. And so a long history of businesses interacting within that aquifer and that wellhead protection area without incident. And when I say without incident, of course, there's been some small reported pieces of, for instance, a small spill, but those follow the procedure of a wellhead protection plan. That's why they exist. And so appropriate response was taken, no issues had. And that all goes through IDEM and the proper reporting agencies. Want to mention that the site, the Altium site, would be below the wellhead protection area, so the actual building and development itself would not be in the protection area, but the site of purchase, the larger acreage would be, the northern portion of that. So there's been discussion and working with the company through the development agreement to obviously go through all the proper procedures for permitting and adherence to the wellhead protection plan. So working again together in concert. And then also an interaction, the town and most municipalities within the county operate in conjunction with the health department and the wellhead protection process and ordinance that is established here in the county.
Can we ask a question, or?
Sure, go ahead.
Maybe I might be getting ahead of myself here, or the presentation. Is Altium planning on doing any monitoring wells on its site itself? Or are they required to, or are they going up and beyond to do that, or what?
Councilman Krasinski, you were just a little bit ahead, but that's okay. I don't mind answering that question. But no, absolutely, the discussion has been ongoing, and that is what we're working on in the language of that. But yes, I don't want to call it a commitment, but discussion of having 4 additional piezometers installed. And in addition to doing the water or the groundwater depth monitoring, we would also add water quality monitoring due to the concerns. And I think there's also a statement in the Peerless Midwest study that mentioned because this is an unconfined aquifer, meaning there is no top layer to confine, that it is susceptible to surface contamination. So therefore, we want to take the extra step that is voluntary and above and beyond what the state, county, or the town is required to do in a wellhead protection plan. So we are being proactive. And again, that theme of interacting between the council, or between the county, the town, and the industry and being partners, we all have a vested interest in making sure this resource is protected.
Thank you.
Yep, no problem.
Would Altium have their own wellhead, or would they be getting water from the town of New Carlisle?
Thank you. Good question. That has been, the discussion has been and will be made that they will receive water from the town of New Carlisle's treatment plants, one of the two, or both in combination.
So not their own wellhead?
They would not have their own wellhead, correct. And the 3 wells that exist, 2 high capacity, 1 residential on site, 1 would potentially be used for dust control, but those would be abandoned prior to the site taking production.
Thank you.
Yep, no problem. Oh, there's the map, sorry. So this is the map of the wellhead protection area. Again, green being 5-year time of travel, red being 1-year time of travel. And because of the prolific nature of this aquifer and the fact that it has, and I'll use a technical term that Megan was correcting me on earlier, transmissivity, meaning that this aquifer does produce a significant amount of water. You can put wells in a very tight-knit area and still produce what other areas cannot do in a grander area. So 10-year time of travel becomes also important because we, again, are going above and beyond the requirement of modeling just the 1-year and the 5-year time of travel. So, and again, I'll point out that the site or the building location, potential site, would be south of the 10-year time of travel. So again, ongoing and proactive management partnerships between the town, county, and industry. We will continue to work with SJEC to monitor groundwater and the well and the data collection, reporting. We will also install additional piezometers for groundwater monitoring, water quality testing. And again, I think Altium in the conversations we've been having has been meeting and exceeding the same kind of interaction that we've been having with our other industry partners. So that's very positive. The potable treatment plant in the town itself will continue to have wellhead protection oversight. And I think worth mentioning, the town is required to do water quality testing on its potable treatment plant so that it continues to happen. And lastly, St. Joe County has requested, and we have a draft agreement or proposal from Peerless to update the 2019 hydrogeologic background study, which will use existing data and collected data to truth the model to make sure that it is interacting and continue to work towards a better management of the aquifer.
Jared, in a meeting we had today with Mark Espridge from the Health Department, he was very pleased on what you just said, especially about going up and beyond and exceeding the county's ordinance. Because sure, that permit has to go through the health department, but the requirements were very minimum based on our ordinance, and Altium, if, you know, if this is the place, is exceeding all of that.
Yeah, that's correct. And it's good, I will point out Altium has exceeded that expectation in our conversation. And I think this goes to, and I think Megan would indicate, that's the intention of a wellhead protection plan, is to set forth a set of procedures, not just to meet the bare minimum, but to go and be above and beyond. And I did ask whether or not she knows of any other places doing this level of proactive management, and she doesn't. So it could be a potential case study, if you don't mind me saying that, and some upcoming conversations and topics she'll be discussing at some of their industry events. So I think that's really important to note. We're leading the way. I think the town of New Carlisle has been very clear to me as a town engineer that that's our responsibility, and it's a dedicated resource that's very important to everybody involved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
So before we talk about traffic, a couple of things I just want to touch on. There have been some questions asked about work schedules and traffic schedules, things like that. As we understand, the Altium Cells team, or the project approach, is to have 2 shifts, 4 crews, and 7-day plant operations. So what that means is that the day shift will start between 5, 5:30, 6, and 6:30, go for 12 hours, and then the night shift will start at 5, 5:30, 6, or 6:30, and then go for 12 hours. Office employees are typically in the office from 8 to 5. And so what that means from a traffic perspective is traffic will come at very focused times. So between 5 and 7 in the morning, excuse me, 5 and 7 in the morning, 5 and 7 at night is when traffic will come in, come out of the facility. Those shifts could include up to 450 employees, depending on the shift and depending on the time. A shift typically runs 4 days at 12, and then 3 days the next week at 12, and then you have the opposite with the other shift and the other crews. So that's kind of how the model works out. From a truck traffic and traffic pattern standpoint, at this point in time, I think maybe to answer a question from earlier, the worker traffic and truck traffic really is going to be focused towards State Road 2. The goal is not to have truck traffic leave the State Road 2 corridor and go up through the US 20 corridor, in through New Carlisle, east to the bypass. It really is going to be to focus all of the traffic to State Road 2. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. Truck traffic will be gained to the site through the intersection at State Road 2 in Larison, and then enter the site at Fillmore Road. Fillmore is the first east-west road just north of State Road 2. Again, the goal will be to focus all the traffic towards State Road 2. What I'd like to do now is have a little bit more specific conversation about State Road 2 and Larison improvements. Jessica Clark, now with the Lockmuller Group, formerly of the county, will make that presentation.
Good evening.
Jessica, we
Yes,
always
sir.
like to have our alumni come back and talk to us. Yes.
Very comfortable. I like it here. Good to see everyone again, too. I'm Jessica Clark with Lockmuller Group. And as Bill is passing out, this is an exhibit, actually, we provided to NDOT, and we'll be talking about here a little later. But I also want to mention Adam Parkhouse with NDOT is also participating in the call virtually. And I'll let you advance the slide, please. Thank you. So Lockmuller is currently designing NDOT State Road 2 project. And as mentioned earlier, this project actually had been started in advance of an opportunity, development opportunities in this area. So it was a programmed improvement with NDOT. It is a 13-mile HMA overlay project from US 20 in LaPorte County to the US 2031 bypass in St. Joseph County. It includes various culvert replacements, some median work, and it also includes the structure replacement at Nesbit-Johnny Ditch, which is just west of Larison Road. It is programmed for construction in 2024. The county, thank you. County and NDOT has had ongoing conversations over the years about the intersection of State Road 2 and Larison, and recently Bill Shalio and Sky Metters had initiated a discussion with Lockmuller and NDOT on the opportunity of looking at, can we make an improvement at the same time of the State Road 2 project that is currently programmed? So we took a look at what type of improvements could be made that are, one, feasible, economical, and address the need at this location. And we are recommending, and have had the approval of NDOT actually, to look at acceleration and turn lanes on State Road 2. As a part of that extension of an acceleration lane for the westbound section of State Road 2, we would need to actually extend the structure that was being replaced in that project so it could accommodate that additional acceleration lane. Those improvements are estimated between $2 to $2.5 million. And again, as mentioned, NDOT does support these proposed improvements. So just to take a little look further at what that means, and the larger exhibit kind of gives you a little bit more detail. You can see on the front and back both the east or the west approach at State Road 2 and the eastern approach on State Road 2. But the acceleration lane would both be for southbound traffic coming off of Larison Road, would provide a right turning lane that would allow traffic, especially truck traffic, to gradually gain speed and then safely be able to merge into traffic, versus trying to negotiate the existing intersection, turning right directly into a travel lane with speeds. I know the speed limit is, I think, 60 miles an hour, but most people, if you drive 60 miles an hour, you have someone really friendly on your rearview mirror. So having a truck try to gain speed in that right turning movement is a challenge and does present opportunities for crashes and conflicts. So an acceleration lane would address that. Also would include lengthening the left turn storage lane on State Road 2 for the left turning movement into Larison heading north. This also provides a safety feature where, again, the truck traffic has a better refuge and a longer length to be able to safely slow down to make that left turn movement. Next slide. On the east side, again, it would still be including a dedicated acceleration lane for those vehicles that are trying to make a left-hand turn from Larison onto State Road 2 and want to head east. That dedication lane, again, is going to allow that traffic to gain speed at a safely gain speed and then safely merge into the travel lane. These improvements improve safety by reducing those conflict points, and they can also increase the capacity by reducing the delay. With respect to the construction options, if you can go ahead, next slide, please. Thank you. We have two options. In our conversations with NDOT, they did authorize Lockmuir to include these improvements into that 2024 construction project. With this development opportunity, the county could consider completing partially completing these improvements via a permit in 2023. The benefit of doing that is for the site construction, because it would help the construction traffic be able to move more freely and safely in and out to access the site. And why we say it's a partial construction is because, again, the structure at Nesbejani needs to be extended to be able to fully build that XL lane for the westbound traffic. So we would be able to make the majority of the improvements in 2023. The construction traffic would be able to utilize that, and then with the 24 project for NDOT on State Road 2, we'd finish the remaining improvements that would be incorporated with that structure replacement project. Pardon me, sorry, didn't know if anyone, okay. Other improvements the county is proposing with this development would be a rehabilitation and widening of Larison Boulevard between State Road 2 and Edison Road. Again, a benefit of that is to be able to provide more free-flowing traffic, turning lanes for safe ingress and egress off the new development site. With that project, we'd also install conduit extension between 2 and Edison to fully connect and extend the broadband through that area. As Bill mentioned earlier, they would be looking for their site entrance to be coming off of Fillmore Road, so that would be looked at also to extend that as a utility corridor, extend broadband, sewer, water, and then also would need to be improved structurally to support the truck traffic. As this development area continues to grow, additional analysis at that intersection would be warranted. At this point in time, the proposed acceleration and turning lane improvements address that current need and those the existing safety concerns we have in that area. But if a potential significant truck traffic generator would move into this area, further analysis would be warranted to see if there's other intersection improvements that would be necessary at that time. But for this development opportunity and the current need, the improvements that would be included at a minimum as part of that NDOT project will help improve that safety and improve that capacity need that currently exists. Any questions?
Dan's right.
Do you
Yes,
know
sir.
what the ADT for this project would yield beyond construction? Do we know how many trucks they're anticipating would be ingressing, egressing,
I believe the
the average daily traffic
numbers
count?
that we have right now are about 16 per day. So it is not a significant truck generator at this point in time, what has been given to us. But the site work that has been limited as far as what has been shared. We really haven't received direct traffic numbers, that type of thing. We were fortunate to receive the estimated shifts and number of employees and that type of thing. But the residential, or I say residential, but recreational vehicle type traffic doesn't necessarily affect the operational capacity of that intersection. It's really the truck traffic that's going to drive what solutions you're going to build at that intersection. And at 16 trucks a day, that doesn't influence to a different step or, a more elaborate type solution.
I mean, it's well known that that intersection has been the site of, several
Yes.
semi-accidents over the years. And I see these improvements as being critical and important to help alleviate and prevent some of that.
Yeah.
I heard you say further study would be required if things change.
Mm-hmm.
What's the breaking point to creating a signalized intersection, or is NDOT opposed to that because it's on a state road?
I wouldn't say, I'm not going to directly speak for NDOT. However, we have looked at various options as part of
Right now there's a flashing
the
light.
traffic analysis of this entire area. A traffic signal probably isn't I'll say one of the best tools for the types of issues you're seeing at that intersection, because your biggest issue right now is going to be your rear ends, that time component of vehicles trying to gain speed and enter and merge traffic, and then being able to recognize that vehicles are slowing down. So unfortunately, what we experienced at State Road 2 in Quince, you would be introducing at State Road 2 in Larison, and with that truck component, that it'd be something that you'd want to definitely further analyze. Unfortunately, there isn't an easy formula that says 100 trucks per day, you do this, 200 trucks per day, you do this. It really is, you've got to look at that traffic overall, and if we get a 150 truck per day type generator or a 200 truck per day generator, there may be other improvements that would help facilitate those movements. But with the traffic we have today, these providing acceleration lanes improves that capacity and that safety, I say tremendously, at that intersection, because it's by doing that sweeping turning lane, you're allowing that truck to already begin speed to generate about 25 to 30 miles per hour before they're really even making their right-hand turn on that acceleration lane. And they are able to then get up to the 55, 60, 65 mile an hour by the time that acceleration lane would merge back into the travel lane. So it's a lot easier for them to maneuver in and out at that intersection that way.
Thank you.
Council, again, this is Adam from MnDOT. Jessica's done a great job. Thank you, Jessica, explaining what's going on here. I would mention that, as Jessica's mentioned, NDOT is, generally supportive of this. We do think that the acceleration, deceleration lanes or the proposed improvements here will significantly help the situation. But like any intersection or a section of roadway in our district, continuously evaluating conditions on the ground, what we're seeing, what kind of data is being generated will be necessary, especially as Jessica points out, if another big traffic generator, specifically maybe a truck generator, were to come in. So this isn't to say that anybody believes that this is, necessarily the fix that'll solve all the problems 100 years into the future, but we certainly feel like this will have a significant impact to safety and mobility, frankly, in this area currently. And again, just continuing to evaluate that moving forward.
Thank you, Adam.
As I mentioned at the beginning of our remarks this morning, we also have the GM and Ultium team with us this evening, and why we wanted to at first give you kind of a high-level overview of some of the key things that we've heard about from a question from your local experts that are working on this. We also think it's important to hear from the team. So John Blanchard from GM, Tom Gallagher, the CEO at Ultium, are with us. John, how about we turn it over to you for maybe to mention things that maybe we missed, or should we catch up on, or Tom, either one, if you want to sort of weigh in there.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jeff, and thank you to the council. Mr. President, appreciate the opportunity. Last time we were in front of you was August 23rd, and we fully intended on having a whole crew there today for final approval. But as Bill had mentioned, given the ongoing daily activities between all the technical teams and given the complexity of the project, we agreed that to add 2 weeks to the schedule, while painful on our end, was the right thing to do. So we did support that, and I think that your technical team is top notch. I'll tell you, between the water, the aquifer, the traffic, they've been working with our folks. We had mentioned Tom Gallagher, who's our COO of the joint venture, Jim Hartnett, who is part of our sustainability and environmental team, Matt Emery, who's one of our environmental engineers. So I know the technical folks are meeting on a regular basis, and so we really appreciate that. We're planning on September 27th to be there with the Redevelopment Commission on the Board of Commissioners, and then in front of this illustrious group on the night of the 27th. So we've felt that this was a great opportunity to go through the more technical details. Candidly, I'm learning something every day when the technical folks talk through it, so I do appreciate it. We're open to answering any questions. We think we have the right team here. We also have Troy Kennedy, who's taken the lead on the development agreement from our GM tax staff. He's also on the line. So we think we have the right team here. We know that a lot of questions were answered, but Jeff, I like the idea of that chamber website. I'm not sure if that's something that the company can tie into, but I'd like to go out and take a look at that as well. So we're open to any kind of questions or comments that the council may have. We're prepared to answer them the best we can.
Tom, maybe can we come your way, Tom? Because I know you had your hand up earlier. Did you want to add anything before we got to some questions?
No, I was just going to say this is an important project for Ultium Cells. I mean, so certainly GM is our customer, and LG Energy Solution as an important partner remain committed to providing in a transparent manner critical information so the council can consider this proposal. So we remain committed to putting together the best business case, taking this with high degree of urgency in our business plan, and support an appropriate decision. So again, coming back before the council, we believe is important to have continued dialogue, discussion, and answer any specific questions. And so I would say we're prepared to get into those details and address anything that may exist from a council perspective or others. So thank you.
Mr. Krasinski?
Jeff, you touched on it earlier about the wages and benefits. I don't know if that's something that Tom can address or you were planning on addressing. I know we talked about that. There's been a lot of discussion. I don't want to take any thunder away from Councilman File because he brought it up earlier. So.
Right. And maybe we'll tag team it, Tom. So I have what I would call some community perspective in terms of where wages are on specific jobs. Tom can speak a little bit more to the company. Tom, do you want to touch on just the company side of things? I'll touch on the community side.
Yeah, sure. So appreciate the interest, and certainly we want to have a competitive compensation package for all employees. And so just to highlight some of the key information relative to our experience in hiring in Ohio. We've been successful in attracting candidates and hiring. So we continue to hire people at a rate of greater than 80% acceptance to our applicants that go through the process and are extended an offer. So we're proud of those who want to come and join the Ultium team. As reference to specifically to the compensation package, it really includes a range of elements. And I believe the questions are specific to the production workforce, I believe is because certainly this employs more than 1,700 people, ranging from leadership levels to engineers to finance, It's a range of functions, both professional, production, maintenance, quality, and supply chain. So I assume the questions relate to starting and ongoing wages of our production workforce. So is that correct to assume that that's the question, or are you wanting clear indication of all compensation at all levels of the company?
Well, yeah, the total compensation package, really, Tom. You know, we've heard the numbers from $22.50 on the average to $25.50 on the average, and as low as $18, $19 an hour. You know, plus benefits. So, you know, let's say it's 22. Let's say it's $22.50. What's on top of that in regards to the benefits, Tom? Health insurance, you know.
Sure. Yeah. So it's from the first day of employment, we extend healthcare, vision, and dental. So we're proud of that. And that's one, often there's a growing period that can be greater than a month for new employees. And so that's an attractive piece. In addition to that, there are opportunities for investment in continuing education. So work-related continuing education opportunities exist so that people can grow and grow in their career and capabilities. So there's tuition reimbursement up to $8,000 per year towards items that would benefit the employee in the workspace. So we're happy about that, and that really provides a pathway for some that are at different points of their career or want to continue to grow as they enter the workforce. So we're happy about that as well. And then in addition to a traditional compensation plan, there's also there's elements tied to the performance of the company and the contribution of the individual. And so those range based on, they can be anywhere from $2,000 to $8,000 per person, depending on their level of compensation and the particular work they perform. So we're excited to have not only a base wage or salary framework where people are paid, but also a way that they can, based on the productivity and the quality performance, benefit in the results of the company. Additionally, which seems small but are also an opportunity, our partner companies have contributed. So employees will get a benefit of purchasing LG products, consumer electronics projects at employee pricing, as well as General Motors products at employee pricing. So we're proud to offer those opportunities for cost savings for employees and their families. So those are some of the benefits. We think it's competitive and really gives an opportunity for people to be compensated well and then grow in their career. On the wage compensation front, so there certainly is an entry position where people enter into the facility, and so people who are compensated on an hourly basis, our workforce, they would enter in at a wage rate and then have every 6 months for basically a growing period of 7 years, they would have a wage compensation increase. So within their current position, as they grow competency, we want to recognize that and grow their wage commensurate to that. So there is not only an entry level wage, but a case where you grow your wage and it increments every 6 months. And the ability to apply and be awarded positions for growth within a production or quality function, movement into maintenance or other functions or ways that employees can increase their compensation within the company. So we're proud of those as well. So that's overall. I would just say, if there are certainly, it's been covered in previous forums. An average for our compensated employees who are compensated hourly in 2024, we're anticipating greater than $19.40 per hour on average. And as we look into the out years, as people grow, as I mentioned, their ability and their wage capability, it will be higher than $21 per hour. So again, that gives you perspective, and certainly it's in line with what we're executing here in Ohio currently. So.
And Tom, if I could weigh in a little bit too, and just add to that. So the current average production wage in St. Joseph County, for example, is $19.41. So in line with what Tom was mentioning there. I want to just speak to a couple other points that he made. He mentioned things like healthcare benefits, healthcare, dental, vision on day one. Right now, about 30% of all employers in our area do that in the first 30 days. So this is unique, I think, or somewhat unique to our community. About 60% of those offer those in the first 3 months. So we were excited from an employee benefit standpoint to not only have a wage that is commiserate with sort of where production workers are already making, but benefit packages that exceed that already. Tom talked about training development as well. About 64% of our employers are providing training for their hourly workers. Tom mentioned that that's an important priority for them. About 45% are offering some sort of tuition assistance. Those are current employers here right now. Tom mentioned that they're also doing that. So a couple of those were just things that I think have us excited about what this means. I know last time we talked a little bit about wages plus benefits and such. When we've looked at what we think job classifications go in this, we feel like the county has met or exceeded the average wage in every case, and then the benefit package sort of tips this well. As Tom and John and others have mentioned in the past, they have a great priority of not these just being jobs, but these being careers. And they're going to make a real point to find folks and put this on a career path. Tom mentioned, for example, the accelerated wage, the raises every 6 months, the chances to make performance bonuses early on. Some of that's different than what some other employers are doing here in the county. People, because of Altium and the GM-LG partnership, I think will be excited about career opportunities here. Some of these positions are going to be low skill. People are going to walk in here without any skill whatsoever. The company is going to put them in a position to be successful by giving them the training and the work that they needed. So this is not something that we took lightly when we've been thinking about the company in particular, because we wanted a company here that had that strong reputation of having a great work environment, good wages, good stable employment. GM certainly has demonstrated that the last 86 years here in Indiana. We think Altium will do the same here in our community as well. So just wanted to add some of that community perspective. I've got a little handout I can provide you afterwards too, just with some of the different wage levels that currently happen in St. Joseph County, so you can help put some perspective on what does a maintenance worker, what's a production worker make, what's a janitor make. Those are statistics that we pulled from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. That's the most readily available source on employers, and so we think the Altium team is at or above that, and when you factor in the compensation package and the career path opportunity, it's a good fit for our community. So.
Just like to make a comment on the other side of this, and that is the benefit that we kind of offer to these people in terms of the cost of living. As we all know, what you get paid is only half the story. What you have to pay out for your house and for everything you buy is the other part of the story. And I'm sure you have data and you've talked to the people of Altium about this, but our community is one of the lowest cost of living places that they could go with this plan, which says that whatever their compensation level is, gets a lot more done in our community than almost any other. Oftentimes when I talk to people and they complain about the price of a house, I say, have you ever lived anywhere else? And they say, no. I said, well, I already knew that, So I think the other side to this that we offer as a community back to these people is how far the dollars go that's paid to the people and how important that is, their cost of living, in determining us versus other places they could put this with a higher cost of living than we have.
And I think I appreciate that point. I think that's Dick. One thing I'd like to help mention as well too. So it's important to remember that there's a whole range of jobs going to be available here. Tom has mentioned in the past, for example, they have the kind of the high end. They certainly have entry level janitors and others, like every company here in town does. They're going to have engineers on staff as well too. So it's important that we not put the entire site in the context of that production wage, for example. Obviously, the production's an important piece of it, but it will provide a range of opportunities for folks at all different levels levels of employment here. So there will be engineers that are attracted here. There'll be other site and production managers and those kinds of things that will, so again, I think what we've our conversations with Tom and John and the team have made us feel good about where those range of wages fit on those different levels within the company.
The other point, I think, kind of came out earlier in this discussion about where our money goes for county government. And basically, our money for county government goes into making this a good place to live. You know, safety and law and fire and protection and all kinds of things. And so it is a very good place to live. And I think that people with our friends here that look around can find out that this is a very good place to live, and we got a lot of data for that. But the point is, it's a good place to live if you can find a job. And I think that needs to be the theme by which this community looks at this project. We spend most of our time on a county government talk about making it a better place to live. We need to spend an awful lot of time saying, we need to make sure it's a place where you can get a job so you can stay here. I don't know how many of you are parents out there that have your children that were educated here. They say it takes about an average of $130,000 to raise a child. You know, they have all kinds of data. But the point is, we do that. We do it because we love our children. We have wonderful education institutions here. But how many of them have to end up someplace else because we don't have a job here for the child? And so we have to, as parents, go visit them some other place where they got a job. These are jobs. This is what the whole economy of the place sits on, is jobs. So keep that in mind as we work with our good friends.
Maybe I just do a quick reminder again. sbrchamber.com/Ultium is where we've attempted to answer frequently asked questions. So again, several have asked some great questions throughout this. We continue to add to that, populate new information. Folks have wanted to know about the aquifer. We went into detail tonight about it, but we've got a really detailed section on that as well too. What we've been able to glean from the other Ultium projects is some of the filings they've done with the EPA and others, so we feel like we have a good understanding of what they're doing on the environmental side. These are good environmental stewards, is why we were attracted to them in the first place, but if you're interested in diving into additional detail on that, again, you can visit that. We'll continue to populate it. If there's a question that's missing there that you'd like us to find an answer for to help you as your constituents are asking you about the site, we're happy to continue to build that out. This has been a work in progress. And as John mentioned, he's kind of learning every day, as are we. And Tom is a great source of information. He's obviously at the helm of a large operation that's ramping up right now. And the company has a strong interest in making sure you understand that they want to be great community partners. Tom has talked at great length even about where he hopes to get employees, what some of those paths are, the careers that he hopes to build. And I think what you'll see, or our experience with General Motors, for example, in Indiana, is they're a phenomenal community partner in every town that they're in. We believe Ultium is going to be the same. They have a little bit of that culture in them, and we would expect them to be a great community partner. This is a company that we anticipate being here for a very long time, and we're excited about this. And we're hoping that they'll be able to make the business case in early October for a St. Joseph County location. We know they have a lot of great options. There's many communities that would love an investment like this. We think this is a great community for it, and part of this process, if you will, is helping them understand what we have to offer here and helping us understand what they have to offer us. And we think at the end it could be a great partnership. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
I'd like to say, Mr. Ray, that site that you put together is a tremendous resource. I appreciate it. I've used it a bunch.
Thanks.
There's more information on there than anybody could ask for, but yes, I
Great.
expect there will be more questions coming.
Yeah, 4 new buttons just went up this afternoon too. So there you go. So knowing that we were having the aquifer conversation, we've teamed up with Jared and the Peerless team to help make sure we could explain that, so that if you missed something during the high-level overview tonight, you can go back and read a little bit about it later on this evening. It's fascinating. Jared would tell you that it'll invigorate you later on.
If you have one of these, you've got a lot of information to give to us.
You do. But we realize that that there may be unanswered questions still. We're not pretending to know or understand everything that's there. So if you have others, don't be afraid to ask us. We're happy to share that. And I'll share some of this wage information with you as we leave this evening. So,
thank you very much. Next on the agenda is, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Catanzaro.
Mr. Ray, was Shelley Klug gonna say anything? You talked about power. You guys mentioned there was people here representing
Yeah,
power.
yeah. So INM, our electric provider, is on. Shelley Klug is our economic development partner. Shelley, you still on?
I
Shelley,
am.
Go
Can you
ahead.
hear-
So, and
Yeah, was there a specific?
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to say a big piece of, obviously the site is attractive for a number of reasons we mentioned earlier, but the access to power is one of those critical ones. So Shelley, you want to just maybe just say hello and why you think this is an attractive site for the project?
Yes, those of you that are familiar with the area, and thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Council. And I just want to concur with John Blanchard, like, wow, this has been a huge learning session, and that website is fantastic. I've just been pushing all the buttons, but trying to pay attention at the same time. That site, those of you who are familiar, have seen a lot of transmission lines overhead. Love them or hate them, they do provide a lot of power, and they're coming. Most of them are coming from, those lines are coming from Olive Station, and Olive Station is just north of US 20, and there's a small solar array there as well, just on the north side of 20, not far from Olive Station, and that's not far, I guess, from where the Honeysuckle Solar is going to be. So it's just really kind of a neat coming together of the fact that we've had that power there for years, as you know. And it's just a massive amount of power that is being not generated, but it's being transmitted from that station. Some of it is coming from Cook Nuclear up in Michigan. But yeah, we have that, the lines there. It will take some additional infrastructure extensions, and that's going to be INM doing that. That's not any kind of a taxpayer or ratepayer expense. That is what INM is doing on the basis of the revenue that will be received from the project. So yeah, it's a great spot. There's we've been talking to the company about how exactly we'd run the line and where we would put the substations to serve them. But there is space for all of that, and it's going to work out really well, I think.
Is there any opportunity, Shelley, for, I know you mentioned it at one of your previous appearances, for them to maybe reduce their carbon footprint? I know what they're manufacturing there, but to take advantage of Honeysuckle or any other project like that, or the gas power generating station nearby, any opportunities there? Or maybe you would be able to answer, maybe Mr. Blanchard would be able to, or Mr. Gallagher, would there be any possibility for solar on the actual site of the plant?
Yeah, I think we can all. Oh, go ahead. I think we can all three give you a piece of that. I just wanted to just do my part, and then I'll turn it over to those folks. I would just say that in general, most of those commercial size solar arrays and renewable energy generating resources go into the grid. So they're connected to, in our particular case, that's the PJM grid. A lot of Indiana is in the MISO grid, but Indiana Michigan Power, and we are connected to PJM. The St. Joe Energy Center is providing power also into that grid. I believe Honeysuckle is in the queue to receive a permit to also be going into that grid. So from that perspective, a lot of different renewable energy resources are going into the same grid that then is dispensed through all of our customers. In addition, to help support that and to help make the case for more renewable energy, companies also have the opportunity to buy RECs, which are renewable energy certificates or credits, however you determine that. And those in turn, in some sort of really small way, but they also do help pay for some of the resources that we are constructing. So I'll turn it over to the company to answer how they would foresee going forward with that.
Yeah, so we're committed to targeting and leveraging renewable resources, both from our industry partners, but also leveraging some of the strength of General Motors in North America. And so GM has made some strong commitments as it drives to a full all energy from renewable sources. And Ultium Cells is targeting by 2030 to procure all of our energy needs from renewable sources, if not before. So we have some of those in place for Ohio. So as we've built and are beginning to operate we have those in place for Ohio, and our plan would be the same for Tennessee, and certainly Michigan as we look to Site 4. So we're excited about that and the potential that it represents. And so solar arrays are one of those options, but certainly there are other renewable sources we would consider and would likely look at market opportunities rather than building out solar on the property. The building is not being constructed for solar array on the roof. So it's a considerable investment in the building structure and building it with a solar array capability has some pretty dramatic impacts when it comes to the construction timing and costs. So we're going to be looking to commercial opportunities as a primary outlet.
Thank you.
Mr. Krasinski? Tom, just one, if you could just touch on a little bit, why not rail?
Why not rail would really gets into, it was asked earlier about how many trucks. So I anticipate an average of 120 trucks a day, could be as high as 150. And so most of those are about 60% of those, maybe 50% of those would be 40-foot containers. These are the sea containers with material in them. And so those will be West Coast. Those will likely be coming in the West Coast. And to get those off, you really can have a dead end railhead for the ability. You need to have a drive-through railhead capability. So with intermodal. So the site is not well positioned for intermodal. So rail capability would be nice, but outbound is not supported. Inbound is really some unique capabilities that so we would likely use a nearby intermodal capability to get it onto a truck and deliver it to the site. So
Tom,
that's our thinking.
And Tom, correct me, all the unloading is done by truck, but it's also done inside the facility. Nothing's done on the outside, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, we have sealed dock doors, and containers and or 53-foot trailers are sealed to the building and unloaded and brought into the facility. We do not intend to store containers or material outside.
And the material, if I recall, is not hazardous at all at this point until you start mixing it, correct?
Well, I mean, it is not hazardous. Yeah, there's a lot of I don't want to get into specific definitions of. Yeah, so I would just say the material. You're right, and when you mix it, you certainly have to understand and plan for it. But I would just say by definition, there are certain processes we need to monitor and steps we need to take. So I don't know if you want to add anything on that, Jim, from an environmental perspective, since you've studied the chemical array and the planning associated with it.
Essentially, the materials that are transported on the road will be in containers that prevent any exposure. And so we don't take it out of those containers until it's inside the building and being moved into the process equipment. So, the materials should not present a hazard, but there are materials that are considered hazardous materials themselves, but they're handled appropriately for the transport across the highways and into the plant. So.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay.
I got one question. A little bit off topic about the project, but just kind of more of a curiosity. I was asked by a constituent about the total KWH load that they expected this, and I gave them a guess. I told them it was a guess, but do you know, I assume Tom, but whoever might know what you were expected to be?
So the KWH is the kilowatt hours. Is that what you're talking about, electric usage?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll have to look that number up unless one of them has it off the top of their head. But what I can tell you from a demand standpoint, it's 120 megawatts or thereabouts. That's the target. Certain specificities we do keep confidential with all of our customers. but I can say that our target is about 120 megawatts in full production.
Okay, that gets me close enough. Thank you.
Yeah, I can do the math pretty quick here in just a little bit, but I don't remember what that is off the top of my head.
Any other questions or comments from council? Thank you very much. Next on the agenda is unfinished business. Next is privilege of the floor, limited to 3 minutes on items not on tonight's agenda.
Good evening. Deborah Durrell, 21677 Otton Road, South Bend. Thank you for all of your work throughout, and especially tonight, providing all of this information for the public. I greatly appreciate it, and I'm sure a number of the rest of the people here and online do as well. I would like to share what I think is some good news to add to all of the work that we are trying to do here to provide a quality life for the people who live here. And I received this in a bulletin from the Natural Resources Defense Council. Thanks to a lawsuit brought by them and their partners, a federal appeals court has ruled that the determination by the EPA under Trump that the chemical does not pose risks to human health, that's the toxic weed killer glyphosate, which is the active ingredient in Roundup and other herbicides, is that their determination under Trump that the chemical does not pose risks to human health and is not carcinogenic was, quote, not supported by substantial evidence. Furthermore, the court found that the EPA broke the law when it neglected to evaluate the impact of glyphosate on endangered and threatened species prior to signaling that it would allow the use of the chemical to continue virtually unrestricted. Since the original lawsuit was filed, the agency has determined that glyphosate is likely to harm more than 90% of wildlife protected under the Endangered Species Act, and the rampant overuse of the weed killer has been linked to the disappearance of native habitat vital to the survival of struggling pollinators such as monarch butterflies. For years, the EPA has refused to take action to address the harmful effects this pesticide has on people and the environment. The court made clear that EPA's foot dragging cannot continue. These delays have to end if we are going to protect farm workers and others who are forced into close proximity with this dangerous chemical and the wildlife that is indiscriminately impacted by it. I feel this is excellent news for those of us who have loved ones who are affected by these things and who are very concerned about our pollinators. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. Dan Caruso, 305 Compton Street, New Carlisle. I want to thank you all for your work. Obviously, you received an email I sent to all the council members, all the commissioners, and I'm hearing answers to questions that I had put into that email. So obviously, the questions were asked and you got your answers. I'm comforted with that. I am also, from talking to Mr. Baxmeyer earlier today, he too had acknowledged that there were questions that needed to be asked ahead of this project. And my experience with Jared Huss in New Carlisle, I've always found him to be very upstanding, and his report comforted me tonight on the water conditions. And since it was on tonight's agenda, I can't talk about it any further, but something did come up tied to that. State Road 2 in Quince, somebody mentioned comparing it to Larison and State Road 2. I'm ahead of the game. I've read ahead in the textbook. There's something coming up at the APC meeting next Tuesday where the owners of that service station there want to buy up that whole area and turn it into a truck stop and put in diesel pumps, further to attract trucks into this area for no reason, just to come get gas from either direction. And I'm saying you are just playing with fire there. I'm speaking now. That has got to be denied, because you've already got collisions happening, and they say, well, it's people not judging people pulling out from the intersection. No, it's people trying to shoot that light there at Quince and 2, and then getting into collisions. And when you throw 150, 200 more trucks in there, minimum, plus the guys that are just coming in to get fuel, you are just playing with fire. I would urge you that, I don't know what the APC is going to do next week with their action, but I would urge you to kick this out the door. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is a motion to adjourn. Do I hear a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? This meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much. Yeah, Mary's iPad.
Hi, yes, I've had my hand raised. Thank you for
Sorry.
noticing that.
Sorry about that.
Hi, my name is Mary Countryman. I live at 52959 Timothy Road, New Carlisle, Indiana. I just wanted to share a little bit with the talk of the gloom and doom of the economy, and the stock market took a big 1,200 point dive today. And we're hearing so much about recession and jobs, and the labor force lacking employees to fill jobs, and they're looking for willing workers and trained workers. I'm hearing so much on the high cost of living. I just wanted to share some information, so if it would help anybody out. There are currently over 2,600 job openings within a 25-mile radius of New Carlisle. And these include a variety of jobs, entry-level, remote, part-time, full-time, with a variety of wages and hours, some technical, some physical labor. And for example, there's Howmet and LaPorte is about 14 miles away, and they have excellent benefits. They have jobs, on-the-job training, and they range from $23 to $28 per hour. Monosol and LaPorte also has job openings, and they pay even higher wages. So, and there are currently 13,849 jobs open in St. Joe County, according to Indeed.com. So there are jobs out there that have been going unfilled, and with the living wage with one child being posted as $29.43 an hour, with one adult living with one child, $29.43 an hour for the living wage. I just wanted to share that all those jobs have been out there. So there are jobs here that have gone unfilled for so long. So hopefully that'll help somebody. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
We're adjourned, right?